Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. After Wuya swept through the other tribesmen, he flipped in midair and saw his master's two consecutive skills. The first skill was the Golden Buddha body, and the second was Abandon Wisdom. Wuya suddenly recalled when he had been gathering information in the past, his men had claimed they saw a 100-foot Golden Buddha body at the Holy Land in Runan. At that time, he did not believe them. After all, only the finest of high monks could cultivate their Golden Buddha bodies until it was 100 feet tall. However, after witnessing this, he realized they were telling the truth. As he hovered in the air, he regarded Zhou with a complicated expression on his face. He was not certain if he had made the right choice. However, since it had come to this, he could only press on even if there was a chance he was repeating his past mistakes. Shen Liangshou sat limply on the ground. He stared at Zhou up in the sky and began to clap. The sound of his applause was abrupt and lonely, but it pulled everyone back to their senses. The Nether Sect disciples inhaled deeply. Li Jingyi took several steps backward. The others looked at the palm-shaped pit and had difficulty calming themselves down. Xiang Lai was a disciple of the Celestial Master's sect. He had established a name for himself in the cultivation world early on. He was very knowledgeable in the Celestial Master's sect's mantras and talismans. He was one of the few outstanding cultivators of his sect and a first-rate elite in the cultivation world. Abandon Wisdom was also the trump card that he was famous for. Perhaps, even at the moment of his death, he did not expect that he would be killed by his own technique. At this moment, only the palm-shaped pit could be seen. No one could see Xiang Lai, and they did not know what the situation was like in the pit. After a while, they discovered there were no signs of life coming from the pit. When Zhou heard the notification of the 1,500 merit points reward, he stroked his beard and nodded. He turned around slowly and coldly regarded the four generals who had launched a surprise attack. The four generals' blood essences boiled. Their eyes were filled with shock and awe. After being repelled by the Golden Buddha body, they were all slightly injured. Zhou gauged the heavenly writings extraordinary in him. He had used 1/3 of it with that arrow to kill.
Ha!
Luo, the six-leaf expert from Roli. Casting Abandon Wisdom used up another 1/3 of the power. Indeed, the might and effects of the skills launched in close range and from afar were different. Although the extraordinary power was handy, it was unfortunate that its frequency of use was limited. It'd be great if I can maintain this power for a longer period. Zhou deliberated over how he should deal with the four generals. Should I roar and deal with them with a sound wave? Well, if he had no options left, he would have to use the deadly strike cards. Zhou kept looking at the generals indifferently. The four generals did not even dare to move a single muscle. Mad. Everyone has gone mad. Lu Bing suddenly laughed. His eyes seemed to be wet from how hard he was laughing. After spending many years at the borders, nothing seemed as hilarious as what happened today. Everyone was baffled by Lu Bing's abrupt behavior. However, they could understand him slightly, after giving it some thought. As a prince who spent years at the borders, his effort alone was a great service, if nothing else. He had kept the other tribes at bay and endured many hardships. It would have been perfectly reasonable for his father to regard him with the highest importance. However, his father sent these four generals to him to control his every move. How could he not find this hilarious? His might that he gained from years at the borders had made him resistant to crying. He could only laugh. Your Highness. Lu Bing's two subordinates positioned themselves before him. The four generals glanced at Lu Bing. We had no choice, one of them said. We were ordered to do this. Even if we die, we have to try. Indeed, men who experienced the battlefield were different from ordinary cultivators. They were not easily swayed, and they would not give up until they achieved their objectives. Even Xiang Lai couldn't withstand my attack. What makes you think that you're fit to be my opponents? Zhou asked tonelessly. The four generals' expressions turned sour as they looked at each other. At this moment, Wuya spread his arms. The wings on his back disappeared. The two parts of the peacock plume merged again and returned to his hand. He climbed higher into the sky before he said, "Do you have a death wish? If so, I can make your wish come true." The four generals glanced at Wuya. They felt their hopes slipping away even faster than before. Wuya was much more powerful than they had imagined. Wuya was only at the 6-leaf stage. How did Wuya defeat Zhenghai earlier? The four great protectors were injured to varying degrees. It was not likely for them to engage in another battle unless they were to stake their lives on it. Wuya was the only one who could still fight. The four generals knew well that stubbornly putting up a fight would only spell their doom. Unfortunately, there was no turning back. The instant they launched the surprise attacks against Zhou, they could no longer turn back. "I won't accept this." They had seen Zhou unleash several shocking moves consecutively with their own eyes. Just how much primal chi could this old man have left? It was clear the general had spoken with great difficulty. His voice was hoarse, and it was filled with disbelief and reluctance to admit defeat. Even if there were no hope, he would still have to try even if it cost him his life. Zhou shook his head. "Oh, Yongqing. What did you do to make them so zealously loyal to you?" The four generals were clearly ready to forfeit their lives for some cause. One could see how determined and stubborn they were by the way they viewed death, like an old friend. Alas, it was all for naught. Whiz. A 6-leaf avatar appeared in midair and charged toward Zhou. Since they were injured, they would only stand a chance if they went at Zhou with all their might and disregard their lives. At this moment, Lu Bing suddenly stopped laughing. He said decisively as he pointed at the four generals, "I do not wish to become an enemy of the evil Sky Pavilion. Take them down." Perhaps, something had changed in him for him to come to such a decision. The two generals were slightly taken aback. They shook their heads helplessly before replying in deep voices, "Understood." They were the only trusted subordinates that Lu Bing had left. Under his command, the two of them shot toward the four generals. At the same time, Wuya tossed his peacock plume out. The plume spun rapidly while shooting out energy needles. The four generals instantly launched countless palm seals and energy blasts into the air. The attacks sailed across the skies. "This is bad. Fall back." Hua Changying's expression was grim. "What's wrong?" Bai Yuqing pressed his chest. "Primal Fiend Potion." When they heard the words, "Primal Fiend Potion," the expressions of the four great protectors changed drastically. They did not waste time and swiftly retreated with the Nether Sect disciples. Primal Chi surged and rolled above Liang Province's city. The effect of the Primal Fiend Potion was to forcibly absorb the primal chi of the world while exhausting one's own potential. This way, a vacuum of primal chi would appear, creating a primal chi storm. Only strong cultivators could withstand such a storm. Previously, Yi Tianxin had mistakenly thought Zhou had taken such a potion to maintain his peak condition. Everyone was shocked when they saw the vials of Primal Fiend potions in the four generals' hands. This potion was banned in Great Yen. And yet, Emperor Yongqing's subordinates, the four generals, clearly possessed this potion. What was the meaning of this? They had no time to ponder over this as they retreated as far as they could. The primal chi in the air roiled. Although the four great protectors were heavily wounded, it was not a problem for them to fend off the residual impact of this storm. Little Yuan looked at the skies in shock as well. "Master?" Shen Liangshou crawled backward. Now that he had lost his cultivation base, he could only depend on this little girl. He had a pleading look in his eyes which said, "Please go and display your wondrous might." In the skies. Zhou was slightly surprised to see the four generals drawing power from their Danshan's seas of qi. His cultivation base was only at the peak of the divine court realm. He could withstand the storm, but if they were to attack, he would have no choice but to use his item cards. Boom. 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 At this moment, Wuya engaged one of the generals in a fierce battle. His peacock plume supported him from above. With a heaven-grade weapon, he had no trouble holding down an injured six-leaf cultivator. Lu Bing's subordinates held down the other two generals. Where was the other one? Swoosh. Above. A person wrapped in golden energy suddenly shot up into the air before diving down and charging toward Lu Zhou. Lu Zhou raised one hand. Unnamed materialized in his hand before transforming into a shield. Energy swirled around it. Boom. An explosion of primal chi slammed against the shield. The general said coldly, "You've grown weak." He could sense the old man before him was extremely weak like the ants on the ground. He was confident he could kill the old man with a single punch. "You have no primal chi left." Whiz. The general's avatar appeared. At the same time, a blue lotus appeared under Lu Zhou's feet again. He seemed to emit a blue light that outlined his silhouette. With a flip of his hand, the shield morphed into a sword. The black runes on unnamed swirled as they appeared. Lu Zhou slashed unnamed out horizontally. Bam. Ah. The avatar was cut. Lu Zhou's expression was calm. He extended an arm. His palm shone with a clear, blue radiance. The light formed a faintly discernible hand seal as he grabbed the general's neck like a northern goshawk catching a chick. The general's avatar was forcibly shattered by this wizened and big hand. Capture hand seal. The primal chi storm came to an abrupt stop at the peak of its height. Primal fiend potion? So long as the general's Dantian sea of chi was destroyed, no potion would be of help. All Lu Zhou had to do was to destroy the avatar. Lu Zhou's eyes seemed like they were burning blue as he looked at the general in front of him. The general's eyes were filled with fear. He discovered belatedly that the old man before him was like a demon king who had crawled out from a bottomless abyss. It seemed like his misconception that the old was weak had numbed his thoughts and judgment. Those deep and knowing eyes seemed capable of seeing through everything. Lu Zhou's hand clamped tightly around the general's neck like a gold band. This was the best move to use, the Zen Sect's capture hand seal. Since his opponent had consumed the primal fiend potion, it was not advisable to have a battle of attrition. The only way was to defeat his opponent with one move. The expansive heavenly energy? Lu Zhou said slowly and clearly, "I'll destroy your heavenly energy with my bare hands." He clenched his fingers that were shining brightly. Crack. The general's head lolled to the side after Lu Zhou snapped his neck. Lu Zhou let go, and the general fell on the solid ground with a loud bang. Ding. Killed a target. Reward, 1,500 merit points. The light blue energy on Lu Zhou's body vanished. He had used up all his extraordinary power. The Nether Sect's 4 great protectors were filled with emotions when they witnessed this scene. They saw no signs of deterioration in Lu Zhou's cultivation base that came with the approaching great limit. Lu Zhou was just as majestic as he had always been. He was old but still vigorous. Lu Zhou placed his hands on his back as he watched the ongoing battles in his surroundings. Lu Bing's subordinates fought more valiantly. After all, they were not injured when they started the fight. Wuya, on the other hand, seemed to be having a progressively difficult time since he was wounded by the Wolf King avatar earlier. Lu Zhou had already used up his extraordinary power. If he wanted to help, he could only use the item cards. However, he might not have to. Bam. 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 Wuya reeled back. His peacock plume dropped down and formed huge wings on his back again. He flapped them. The 2 generals who consumed the primal fiend potion were as vigorous as ever. Li Jingyi, Lu Zhou said. Li Jingyi was startled into jumping. She bowed from afar and said, "Old senior. Do you like to watch the show?" Lu Zhou stared at Li Jingyi. Li Jingyi shuddered slightly. She said, "Let me explain, old senior. I only followed Xiang Lai here to keep an eye on him. If Xiang Lai had fought earlier, the 4 great protectors would have been dead by now. Lu Zhou stroked his beard and nodded. He looked at Li Jingyi from a distance and said, "Is this what Jiang Aijian told you to do?" Li Jingyi smiled sheepishly and merely nodded. "There's no need for you to do anything against characters of this level, old senior." She raised the paper umbrella in her hand. She leaped at lightning speed into the battlefield as her paper umbrella spun. A huge umbrella-shaped energy shot down from the paper umbrella. Panglai Sect. Green bird. Lu Zhou discovered something immediately. The umbrella in Li Jingyi's hand was called Green Bird. As the umbrella spun, energy blades shot into the surroundings. "Nothing escapes your eyes, old senior." Li Jingyi dropped lower. She summoned her 7-leaf avatar again. Her 7-leaf avatar that was nearly 90 foot tall worked well with her weapon, Green Bird. They launched a barrage of attacks into the surroundings. Boom. 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 The 3 generals were sent flying as they spat out mouthfuls of blood. "Thank you for your assistance." Si Wuya rose higher. He shot numerous energy needles from the wings on his back. The needles shot toward their dancing seas of cheese. Bam. 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 The 3 generals' avatars shattered. At the same time, Green Bird multiplied into 8 umbrellas. Then, another round of attacks that seemed to blot out the skies rained down on the 3 generals. Si Wuya continued to attack as well. Ding. Killed a target. Reward, 1,500 merit points. Boom. The 3 of them crashed down on the ruins of Liang Province's city. Even with the help of the Primal Fiend potion, they could not defeat their mighty opponents. Everything was quiet. The brewing primal chi storm above Liang Province's city vanished without a trace as primal chi began to flow back in the air. Li Jingyi retracted her paper umbrella. She bowed slightly toward the prince and Si Wuya before walking away. Lu Zhou looked at the ruins on the ground. Everything was broken and chaotic. He shook his head. There had been 3 of them, but Si Wuya merely managed to take one out. If Li Jingyi had not joined in the battle, it would have been difficult to say who would have won. In any case, he found this outcome acceptable. Lu Bing, however, did not feel too good. In fact, he looked slightly murderous. Si Wuya retracted his peacock plume and descended to the ground. Little Yuan looked up with a smile and said, "7th senior brother, she's alive. Fortunately, I was here to protect her. Otherwise, she would have died." Si Wuya nodded awkwardly. "Thank you, little junior sister." She meant well, but why did it sound like she was cursing? Si Wuya carried Lu Wenjun and shook his head slightly. Meanwhile, Lu Zhou walked forward in the sky as he stroked his beard and looked at Lu Bing. After his seemingly insane outburst, Lu Bing had calmed down. His expression was apathetic. Lu Zhou looked at Lu Bing and said, "You're not suited for the divine capital. The border is where your calling is at." Lu Bing was slightly taken aback. When he looked up, Lu Zhou was already descending to the ground. Lu Bing considered Lu Zhou's words before he shook his head and sighed. Was he after fame and reputation by staying at the borders for all these years? He had only returned to the divine capital one time, and he had nearly lost himself. He even colluded with the other tribes. He was this close to becoming an infamous character who would be cursed at for 10,000 years. He was so close to becoming a sinner who would even use his own younger sister. Before he knew it, he had turned into the kind of person he despised the most. His opponent was never Great Yan or Great Yan's citizens. The general on Lu Bing's right was frightened. He asked tentatively, "Your Highness, should we report back to the divine capital?" Report back? Why would they go back? To meet that merciless person who would use his own son? Hilarious. No. In that case, where should we go? We vow to follow your highness to the ends of the world and beyond. The 2 generals kneeled in the air. I want to go to the borders. Lu Bing did not refer to himself with the royal pronoun. The borders? I'd like to retrace my steps. Lu Bing said gently as he nodded. He wanted to return to where the blood of his brethren was spilled and where their bones lay in eternal slumber. If you're unwilling, you're free to go wherever you want. We vow to follow your highness to the end of our lives. The two of them did not rise to their feet and continued kneeling. Lu Bing flew downward and said, right back to say that the fourth prince, Lu Bing, has died during the battle in Liang province. Meanwhile, Shen Liangshou shook his head when he saw Lu Bing leaving. Come to think of it, Lu Bing is quite the hero. Alas, the divine capital isn't suitable for him. There's hardly any freedom there. If he's not careful, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. Little Yuan rolled her eyes and said, coming from you? Shen Liangshou felt embarrassed and offered no more of his opinions. Si Wuya did not have the mind to think about Lu Bing. He was keeping a close eye on Lu Wenjun's condition. Lu Zhou landed slowly. He stood before Si Wuya with one hand on his back. He silently extended the other hand towards Si Wuya. Si Wuya knew what Lu Zhou meant. He brought out the Si Wuya peacock plume with a gentle wave of his hand and brought it to his master's palm. Lu Zhou knew that Si Wuya was a man with many plans. This weapon was too powerful in his hands. At this moment, the members of the Nether Sect ran toward them from afar. Their feet stirred up clouds of dust. In just a moment, the four great protectors showed up in their sight.